welcome back to the Comic Lounge. Today's episode is not really much of a collection video. Instead, it's more topical, but it will be showing showing comics out of my collection for references. So, I think everyone has probably heard the news already that, and this would have been released about a week ago or so, right during the very last episode, or close to the end of the last episode of X-Men 97 Season 2, where they're no longer going to be doing live-action series, at least not overloading the, let's say Disney Plus with live-action series, and they're just going to focus on animated series, with at least keeping Daredevil, Born Again, possibly. Again, nothing's quite confirmed there. For us being the sole live action, and of course, here and there, the special presentation, like they did with the Werewolf by Night, and the Christmas special for Guardians of the Galaxy, and then most recently, the Punisher One Last Kill. So, yeah, of course, everyone right now on social media are kind of in an uproar, depending on which social media site you're on. They're in an uproar because they canceled Wonder Man, they canceled Ironheart, they canceled practically what they all liked, and I can understand. But I remember how good X-Men 97 Season 1 was. Not that I didn't care for the second season. I actually enjoyed it. But it's been very... let's just say that's the reaction right now. But I'd seen people go... there might be some stuff that could probably work better as live, in animated, rather than just in live action. Not everything has to be live action. Now again, when some stuff gets canceled and no longer going to be in production, all of a sudden that discourse changes. And again, it's people in general. They don't know what they want. But the whole point of this video is, I think this is going to be a good opportunity. I think them going forward with animated TV stuff might actually be the best thing they'll do, because given the other there's so much possibilities. There's so much possibilities that you can do with animated than you probably could ever do with live action. Not everything needs to be live action, and so I want to spotlight some comic titles that I think would actually work better as animated shows rather than live action. And so let's get to it. The first one is the main one that really immediately came to mind, and after the character Eson the Searcher appearing in 2 episodes so far, I forgot, within like the 3rd or 4th episode of X-Men 97, and then eventually the final episode of X-Men 97, if you're not familiar, that character is tied to a series that got turned into a live-action movie that was bombed. That we're not talking about just bombed. It literally nucleared the whole. Let's just say the whole interest in the series that character originally came from, and of course, Eson the Searcher, in the comics, first appears in this series. And that's the Eternals. And this is the 6th issue, by the way. Again, created by Jack Kirby. He first appears in the 9th issue of the Eternals. I have it. I just didn't want to bring it out because, again, it's in a box that I don't know where it's at. But either way, this is the 6th issue. And again, I just want to bring up the Eternals in general. Now, Eson the Searcher, again, is one of the main Celestials in the comics, besides one of the bigger ones being Airsham. I think I pronounced that name correctly, but he, of course, in comics, ended up being the character that created Apocalypse. So there's some big ties there already between the X-Men and the Eternals. Although, besides being both created by Jack Kirby in the sixth, to begin with. And the movie, to me, the problem with that film wasn't the fact that it wasn't accurate to the comic books. The problem with the film wasn't because of it was woke. The problem with the film wasn't because of any of that. It just should have never, it was never going to work as live action to begin with. I think that, to me, is the big problem. And, of course, it was pretty damn boring. Okay? It was very boring. But to me, with the original comic book series, eventually at some point I will do a read of this series. But for the most part, I just want to bring up the series, and do want to say that what you do get in these comics, with even from the covers alone, should give you a better idea that this probably was never going to work as live action. This should have immediately been an animated series to begin with. This should have been an animated series. I think, to me, this would be dreaming. But I think the last hope that this series has to even gain any more interest again, and I think further interest, is by doing it in animated form. Get whatever creative team that you've been getting with the X-Men 97 series, and this time apply it to this. It would be a very fun project. It would be very interesting to me, really. And I think it would actually be done better. You can actually do the more comic accurate stuff in animated form. We've been getting slightly more comic accurate stuff anyways with the X-Men 97 series. Why not try and apply that logic or template to something like the Eternals? So my pick, this is the first pick, the Eternals. Another one I think that would be great for an animated series is actually a character that I'm surprised Sony didn't do. Here's Sony, who are trying to make money off of the Spider-Man villains. I'm surprised that they kind of went with the characters that were always sort of big, Morbius, Kraven, and then of course they did like Madam Web, who is not a villain really in the comics, but they chose those. Instead, I'm surprised they didn't try and get ambitious with this character, since we kind of did get a live action version of John Jameson. If you're familiar, he does become a character in the comic books, and that's Man-Wolf. After being, because he's an astronaut, and so he goes to the moon and he finds, I think it's referred to as the Star Crystal. And this is, of course, the Marvel premiere, because again, I also have, this is number 45, and here we have is the second part. These were pretty much, we're ending off the whole solo adventure for John Jameson / Man-Wolf. And, of course, with artwork from George Perez, which is so beautifully done in these books, and I had a lot of fun reading these to begin with. These are very fun stories, but this really explains more about the Star Crystal, and that's when he becomes the Star God, when he goes back to the moon and finds the world that crystal or whatever is connected to. And given with Masters of the Universe, this is the stuff that was a precursor to it. This is very much in line with like Masters of the Universe. It's very much that combination of sci-fi and sword and sorcery. And it is so fun. And he's much more of a hero in these stories. And I think, to me, this will probably be a little bit jarring to probably see in live action. This is totally geared towards animated. And it's got almost that Saturday morning cartoon feel. And I think it would be fun to see this as an animated series rather than as a live action. So that's my second pick for an animated series for Disney Plus for Marvel Studios, is do the Man-Wolf character. You can either start out doing some more earlier stuff of him kind of, you could kind of connect it to the Spider-Man's animated series. You can have it connected, but you can flesh out things a lot more. And of course, that's also dreaming because of people complain about the time length of the episodes and how many episodes you got, the number of episodes. And I can see that, but I think if you do this as a series, there's a lot to probably unpack with that, and I think it would be very fun to probably see come to life as an animated series rather than a live action. Speaking of another one that actually can work as live action, but because of so much lore that has been created with this particular character, actually it's going to be two characters. But because with all the lore, I think this would be better off as an animated series. And you can get some actors to reprise the role. What I'm talking about is Deathlock. Here, this is Astonishing Tales number 26. This, of course, the second appearance of Luther Manning. The original Deathlock, of course, aptly named Deathlock the Demolisher. Again, from Rich Buckler, and, of course, co-written too by Doug Mensch. And again, there are two Deathlocks. This is the Luther Manning, and, of course, again, we have the Michael Collins. And the Michael Collins one is the one that is actually a black character, so a person of color, whereas the original was actually more of a white character, but again, different setting. It was more futuristic, like a dystopian sort of world. But here, the Michael Collins one was actually set during the present 616 Earth, so with the actual superheroes, whereas all this stuff dealt with, again, time traveling. And this is the stuff that as people have after reading, of course, I love this stuff. There's a lot of great stuff. This usually was very, very well written. And again, I love the themes that are in the Deathlock comics. But I've seen people also point out the similarities with this, the Terminator, and eventually also RoboCop, because of the whole idea of trying to resurrect a dead person, but as like a cyborg. Or at least someone who's under the control of a government, or in that case, in RoboCop, under a corporate law enforcement agency. And so there's a lot of those same themes, and again, it was all being brought together here. And of course, this was basically Rich Buckler's sort of way to cope with the fact that they didn't get the $6 million man. And he just wanted to do his take on that, and again combine it with like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and doing all of this stuff with being set in like this dystopian future. It really led to some really, really cool stories. And again, I think both the Luther Manning and the Michael Collins character, because they're all very much connected, and this series again being created by the late Dwayne McDuffie, you really could probably do some good fleshing out, and I think this would be so much better as as an animated. This should be better as a animated series rather than live action, just because of what you get in these books in general. And you can have one season maybe Luther Manning and one being all Michael Collins, but eventually once you get to let's say season 3 or season 4, then you start connecting everything else all together and really can adapt both volumes. And I think it'd be a fun idea. So I think I would like to see Deathlock as an animated series. This is a series I want to read more of. But this is one that at one point was once thought for the Sci-Fi Channel. And so at one point this was going to be a live action, but because of the stop and go, I think this is one that should be worked better as a animated series. And again, it's in the same theme as Deathlock, where it's sort of the Luther Manning one, where it's in a more of a dystopian future. It's Strike Force Morituri, and again, this is issue number 1. But from the themes that you get in this and what apparently is said about the entire series, this probably should just work better as an animated series rather than live action, and with the production team of the X-Men 97 stuff and so on, with that writing. I think this would be the one you can probably rather turn into an animated series rather than try and be very ambitious and try and turn this into like a live action movie, let alone a series, This would be the one. I'd say do Strike Force Morituri as an animated series. This is more like a second chance for probably this character too. And because of the fact that this character really has a lot of lore in itself, I do want to see this done as animated in this, because again, we can always talk about how the animated stuff is meant to be removed from the live action continuity. This is one. Captain Marvel. We're talking about the original Marvel. I mean, you can also do Ms. Marvel, because you don't want to leave out Carol Danvers, you know? You don't want to leave out the two characters. They're very much connected. But I think when it comes to the whole world building of the Captain Marvel character in the comics, and of course with Ms. Marvel and Monica Rambeau and all of those, I think would be fascinating, since this would have to eventually get tied to the X-Men because of how Carol Danvers ends up becoming binary by the Brute storyline for the X-Men. But then you have the brilliant story, which at some point I will eventually get to reading, if I can find a copy, is The Death of Captain Marvel, which was written by Jim Starlin, who is the one who really injected some character and some life into the Captain Marvel series. But I'm showcasing this because this is around the beginning of Doug Moench's time on the series, and of course with artwork from the very young Pat Broderick. And this would also lead into those first few issues of the second volume of Marvel Spotlight, where they continued this story. And really, it's the Jim Starlin and Doug Moench stuff that's probably the best if you want to read the Marvel Captain Marvel stories. Because the stuff that's in between, even though it's okay, doesn't have the same oomph. There's not enough of that. And what Doug Moench and Jim Starlin did is by far the best when it comes to the Marvel character. But you have Chris Claremont doing Ms. Marvel. And I think, personally, this stuff, I think, would be much better as animated. So I think it would be a cool one to see this as animated. Finally, the last one, since it's being rumored that the Jim Hammond character, who, of course, is the first Human Torch to be, the very first Human Torch, appearing in Marvel Comics #1 in 1938, 1939. We're talking about around the time of Superman was first created, the Golden Age. He's going to be appearing in Vision Quest. That's the rumor going around. It's speculated that Jim Hammond, the android Human Torch, the first Human Torch, is going to be in there. And I'm just thinking, there's a team that he was actually a part of that actually could, I think, work good as a animated series. And that's the Invaders, who, of course, were first created by Bill Finger, actually, back in 1946 as, the All Winners, was it All Winners team or something like that? And he did. It was, again, the idea was to take the three non-character of that's not Superman or Batman, whatever, because we already were having the Justice Society of America that was created in the early 40s. By 1946, Bill Finger pretty much decides to take Captain America, of course the Submariner, and the Human Torch, and turns them into the All-Winners Squad. There we go. And with that gave Roy Thomas the idea to resurrect that team in the Bronze Age, or at least the late Silver, early Bronze, as the Invaders. Since these stories are all set during the World War II, I think it'd be fun to explore this as a animated series rather than as a live action, like a live action Elseworld story, whatever. And I don't know if I want to see the Invaders as as a part of the actual modern day stuff, whatever. It just would not work. This needs to be kept in the 40s. So the Invaders, I think, would be a great series to be explored as an animated series, and you can do these proper versions, whatever, of Jim Hammond, Namor, and Captain America, but still be faithful, but also maybe do a little bit of freshening. There's so many other takes on the Invaders over time, but I think, again, it would be a fun series to probably see as an animated series, and there you have it. So those are my picks. I think, for titles I think that should work better as animated series rather than live action. Again, those are my personal picks. Again, they can do a lot with the animated format than they really can't do with the live action format. There's a lot more money that has to be poured into doing live action than just the animated. Now there is going to be production money that has to be poured into doing animated, but because you don't have to do sets, you don't have to go through that. You just get a good creative team, just like how you're doing a comic book for a comic book, and just work with animated, and it would be almost the same type of media. And I think it would be better to get some stuff of this, some of this stuff to be explored as animated rather than as live action. And I think it would actually fare better. So those are just my picks. What are your picks? Do you agree with my picks? Do you disagree with my picks? Let me know in the comments section below. So, if you really like what I put on this channel and what I talk about, not only will it do me great, but it will do you great, because once you hit that subscribe button, you will never miss out on any brand new content, everybody. You will never. So please, please do hit that subscribe button. So until then, I hope all of you enjoyed. I will definitely be back with a traditional haul video later within the week. Maybe by the beginning of next week. But either way, I will, and it'll be mostly of online buys. So until then, take care.